first round of Top Cut. Here we go. Josh Lorcy, not feeling too great about this matchup, it looks like. But we saw him on stream. We know he has a checkered history on stream, but he's turned that curse around a few times now. I think you could give yourself a little bit more credit here, Lorcy.
Yeah, one of the game's great interviews, too, so both of them are. Two really nice guys, two really smart players, so I'd love them both to be in the finals. Unfortunately, they're both facing each other here, so hey, hopefully whoever loses this one is able to, opponents win percentage their way into cut either way, but should be a really excellent match. We need two of the region's best players.
Well, here is Lorcy's team. We saw it yesterday. It is the combo of the Delphox and Floette Eternal as the two Mega Pokemon that Joshua is using, alongside the support core that we've been seeing quite a bit of Incineroar, Sinistcha, and even that Sneasler, the double fake out, the redirection, the healing, and then of course the Basculegion at almost 60% usage in day 2, and because it's so strong.
Yeah, the part of Rotom in this team will be played by Basculegion, who will be supporting its team by defeating its foes.
Yeah, I think it's really more like the role of Tyranitar will be performed by Basculegion without needing 3 Dragon Dances to do so.
Yeah, its Dragon Dances or its friends being knocked out. So, attempt to win the game at your own peril. Also fun to see the Delphox there. We haven't got to see it from anyone but Lorcy so far, but I think a very powerful, underrated Pokemon. Substitute very powerful in this format where if you're able to use it without Encore staring you down, and it does counter King Gambit very well, and we saw that Pokemon raising over 60% of the usage stats today. So I'm going to guess Substitute's been pretty good for Joshua over the course of this weekend.
Yeah, Lorcy definitely using that Substitute both to protect the Delphox from damage and also to get around Sucker Punches as we saw yesterday. Should be a really interesting matchup here. Of course, you have the option to go for boost on the Floette. Although going up against Chris's team, not a lot of special damage to really be tanking that. You really want to be going up against more special attackers with, I think, the Calm Mind Floette.
Yeah, and on the other side of the field, again, I've been making fun of everyone picking Charizard a little bit. If I'm Chris Hahn, I feel okay just playing the team that everyone's expecting.
I give Chris Hahn a pass for Charizard, for sure.
Yeah, certainly one of the best players of the region right now, and I think one of the most practiced players of the region. I think he probably does more coaching maybe than anyone, especially the younger age divisions. He knows this game very well. So, hey, if anyone is prepared for the perils that come with playing the most targeted team, it's going to be him. Not a whole lot to talk about in this team list, though. It is very funny that we get another Lorcy matchup where we get Whimsicott versus Delphox. And
with King Gambit.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that both of them know the mechanics this time.
We
all learned to relearn some fun mechanics the last time that Lorcy was on stream, but likely no shenanigans this time, though. I don't think it would be shocking if those Pokemon all wound up in the field together again, so both players will have to keep those mechanics in mind. Even knowing what they are, I think it's sort of a fun thing to play around. One interesting thing to note, we were talking about the 4-attack King Gambit yesterday. This time we get the 4-attack Garchomp, where also another Pokemon that's very tough to knock out in a single blow in this format. Of course, the Pokemon most likely to do that is on the other side of the field at that Floette. No Frostlass this time, but I think Big Moonblast probably going to be enough. Although there is no Moonblast, I guess. Big Draining Kiss, maybe? I assume that's still a one-hit KO?
Big Smooch.
Yeah.
This Garchomp I actually really want to point out, because those of you who have been playing Whimsicott on the Champions Ladder like I have, know about the rise of Poison Jab Garchomp with the bulky set with the Citrus Berry.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Yeah, I'm sort of surprised we haven't seen that. It's been a really popular adaptation on the ladder because so many folks are using Whimsicott, and there's a number of other important Pokemon there's a lot of damage to, including that Floette. So maybe we'll see that later in the match. For now, we have Sinistcha supporting Delphox early on against the Basculegion and the Sneasler.
Yeah, there's the Rage Powder support from Sinistcha, opting to not go in, to keep it in the back for Hospitality healing later. Josh saying, I really need that Rage Powder support immediately, and you can see why, because Basculegion, led by Chris, Delphox can't do anything against that Pokemon.
Yeah, not ideal, but of course, if it's able to get a hold of this Sneasler, it would be able to do a lot of damage to it. Also worth noting, Sinistcha, another Pokemon in this match, but is not taught Protect here. So many moves you'd like to have in the Sinistcha, so Lorcy opted, like, no Protect. I'm going to use all of Machigacha, Rage Powder, Life Dew, and Trick Room, which is very powerful. It does make this turn a little bit trickier because he's not going to just be able to double protect his way out of this fake out before he continues forward.
That being said, the Basculegion is the big offensive threat here, but because it is led, it does not have a fully powered up Last Respects, which means it's a Sinistcha, especially with the Cassib Berry, which reduces the special super effective damage of ghost type attacks, should be able to tank this pretty well if Lorcy wants to. Instead, just going to go ahead and Mega Evolve the Delphox. Look, we're all getting it out of our system. Don't worry, by NAIC we'll have it. Sinistcha takes that flip turn as Basque Legion will switch out for the Charizard. Delphox flinches from the fake out, and Sinistcha expecting to get probably a flip turn into that Delphox, just going to go for a life dew here to heal both Pokemon up.
Yeah, so somewhat like this turn never happened, though does allow Chris Han to reposition here. Charizard
no
looking pretty good in this matchup, where, yeah, no more fake out. Charizard threatening the fire-type damage of the Sinistcha. No Aqua Berry to try to deal with that, so Sinistcha being very threatened now, and again, can't protect, so likely going to have to see a switch in that slot unless Joshua wants to risk just sacrificing Sinistcha here. Sneasler not looking super great here, where Delphox facing it down with the powerful Psyshock, so somewhat likely we'll see a switch in that slot as well, but Charizard relatively uncontested, where Psyshock would do a lot to it, but you know, a Heat Wave the other direction, potentially pretty devastating. Also an option for Lorcy to go just try to get that substitute up here, maybe try and position for later in the match, where it seems like relatively unlikely that Delphox is being threatened with so much damage it could be knocked out this turn.
Yeah, I don't know that Delphox could have a substitute that survives a Heat Wave from Charizard, Mega Charizard in the Sun. But Josh is going to go ahead and switch in the Incineroar to get the Intimidate down onto Sneasler, but what that all actually does is activate Unburden for the Sneasler. So Sneasler now the fastest Pokemon on the field. Chris Han will go ahead and Mega Evolve that Charizard, sets the Sun, gets huge boost to Charizard's stats, and is going to be able to deal massive damage with its fire-type attacks, but fortunately...
catches the switch!
Ooh, wow! Close combat into a Sinistcha. That's actually now an Incineroar, and that's a huge KO for Sneasler. Chris Han catching Lorcy on that switch-in. Delphox just trying to go for the Psyshock, but because of the Unburden boost, Sneasler was able to get that close combat off first. And you trade that every day if you're Chris Han. Here's the Heat Wave coming out from Charizard. Single target damage onto Delphox. Deals quite a bit of damage, about a third of its health there. So maybe with two Pokemon on the field, a substitute would have survived.
Yeah, Delphox very specially bulky. I think it would have been close. I think close enough that I would probably not have attempted it. But a really nice play by Chris Han. He gets the call, but I think even if he hadn't, it's a really nice play where with both close combat and Heat Wave being targeted at slot, you know, if Sinistcha hadn't switched, would have taken devastating damage from the Fire-type move. Otherwise, you know, Incineroar going to get hit with a bunch of damage there. I think it would have been pretty bold to try to switch something like a Basque Legion in there, and Floette almost certainly not selected because Delphox is already on the field. So a pretty high percentage gamble there, but a nice play all the same.
Yeah, and when a gamble hits, it hits, man. And getting a KO on that Incineroar is a huge deal for Chris. It really limits Lorcy's options here. That Psyshock dealing just under 50% to the Charizard on Chris's side as Rock Slide comes through, connects onto the Delphox and the Basque Legion. Weather Ball from Charizard will now connect on to the Basque Legion on the switch-in because of the water typing is able to resist it. And despite the Sun and Charizard's massive special attack, Basque Legion is able to get on the field, but it took a lot of damage doing so.
Yeah, these Pokemon are being worn down pretty quickly, and still not kind of quite at the point where a single attack is going to knock out probably either Charizard or Garchomp at this point, with the Sun protecting Charizard from potential Aqua Jet here. So Lorcy's gonna have to figure out something faster. He's running out of resources in a hurry. Sinistcha can heal up a little bit, but not a lot of HP remaining, and certainly that Sinistcha, the healthiest Pokemon, not going to be able to do a whole lot of sweeping as the support Pokemon on this team.
Well, Lorcy is just bouncing the Sinistcha back and forth to get the healing on to Delphox. Delphox going to drink down the Matcha. Charizard protects itself. Chris is not going to put it up to a roll to see if Charizard is able to survive another Psyshock. Instead, protects away the damage, and Garchomp with the Dragon Claw this time connects onto Sinistcha. So no Rock Slide coming through means that Delphox just gets to enjoy that nice 25% recovery from the hospitality.
Now, getting healthier is a positive turn there for Lorcy, even though he doesn't able to get that Psyshock out. At least can try and maybe go for it this time. Hope you get a very high roll. We'll have to see.
There it is. The Psyshock now connecting onto Charizard is enough to pick up the KO, dealing 1 damage more than it did the first time around. Able to pick up that KO. There's the Rock Slide this time, connects onto Delphox and the Sinistcha. Super effective damage, brings it down very, very low. The Sinistcha now is able to set the Trick Room. So Lorcy is feeling very, very scared of this Choice Scarf Basque Legion in the back. Setting Trick Room probably means that Chris is not going to be able to bring it, but actually, because it has the Aqua Jet still is within range of potentially picking off that Delphox.
Yeah, which is fine. I think you're kind of self-sacrificing the Delphox here. It's like, hey, Garchomp would have beaten it anyway, but these are the last two Pokemon correctly guessing with the last Pokemon on Cristopher's side of the field is that Basculegion, and now potentially allowing his own Basculegion to get the advantage there with Sinistcha and Basculegion facing down eventually the opposing Garchomp and Basculegion. So instead the goal here, I think, is just going to be trying to get Sinistcha as healthy as you can while that happens, because Delphox kind of a sitting duck here, and Sinistcha as well, can't protect. So, and Chris said you probably don't want to knock out Delphox too quickly if you can avoid it. Though you're probably going to, I assume, a Rock Slide with Garchomp here to try to pick up the end of the turn, maybe attack more quickly with...
Oh, no! The worst possible miss for the Matcha Gotcha. Lorcy got Matcha got by that, but does get the burn onto Garchomp. We would have loved to get the damage onto that Basculegion, though. So Garchomp is burnt. Only damage onto the Garchomp. Basculegion is still healthy. There is the Dragon Claw into Sinistcha, trying to get as much damage onto that Pokemon as possible, recognizing that is going to be the most important threat here. There's the Cassip Berry going to reduce the power of the Last Respects, but with two of its allies down, that is just not going to be enough for the Sinistcha. And that is a big miss on the Matcha Gotcha. It's just going to be now down to the Delphox and the Garchomp, or sorry, the Basculegion on Lorcy's side to take down the Basculegion and Garchomp. And Sinistcha did its job, though. Trick Room being up means that Lorcy has the advantage. Yeah, I mean, there's still a chance. It's still awkward, but the burn is also a big deal to Garchomp. The RNG gave and took. The Basculegion on Cristopher's side of the field is stuck using that move because it is Choice Scarfed, so the Basculegion can probably just easily pick up a knockout at its opposite number here. I think it's a matter of, okay, well, what is Garchomp going to do? A Rock Slide probably not going to quite pick up Basculegion from this point, so maybe the Basculegion on Lorcy's side of the field could still clutch this one out, even despite losing damage to the Matcha Gotcha miss. Yep, there's the Last Respects from Lorcy into Chris's Basculegion. Chris's Basculegion will now go down. All about this Garchomp. Is it going to be able to deal enough damage? Just going for the Dragon Claw, just trying to clean it up, not allowing any missed chances from the Rock Slide. That does bring down the Delphox. Delphox is now KO'd, but this Garchomp is burned. Basculegion now has no friends, and that is how it likes it. Yeah, max damage from that Last Respects. We'll have to see how much it does. Garchomp getting worn down by this burn, so not just the reduced damage, but also you're trying to get it closer to this Last Respects KO range. There is big Last Respects damage. Not much in the format can survive a fully powered Last Respects from Basculegion. So that's going to be a big win for Lorcy in Game 1 here over Chris Hom. Yeah, maybe the most sinister turn ever, where we both lost and won the game on the same turns. Like, oops, I missed the important one. Don't worry, I burned Garchomp, though. It's fine. Everything's fine. A little bit of fun there. But a really great match by these two trainers where it came down to just a little bit at the end there. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see two more games just like that. Again, really that was a great play by Chris Hahn. Not just like actually picking up the knockout, but the little pivot to get there to begin with, where you placed the first turn sort of conservatively, and I'm sure, and now knowing what he played, I was like, oh, I wish I flip turned the Delphox, but sort of an obvious protect there by Lorcy, so making sure you don't get stuck on the field by flip turning into a protect, and still getting the Charizard out there was great value. Yeah, and just being able to slowly chip down that Charizard with Psyshock, getting it in 2. There was the chance that it would have taken 3 hits on the Charizard, but Lorcy gets it in 2 instead. And like you mentioned, it really was the the Sinistcha winning and losing and then winning the game in the same turn there at the end. Really heads up play by Lorcy to go for the Trick Room there at the end and set himself up for that. This is the downfall of the Choice Scarf Basculegion. It was so powerful early on in the format before people had realized exactly how much damage Basculegion does. But it's really only there for a finisher, like when you don't have any other speed control going on. With the Trick Room option, with the ability to protect and use other attacks on Lorcy's Basculegion, really showed the advantage there. Yeah, I think it's very interesting with Cristopher's team in general. It's like very much like the ranked battles, like special there with both the Choice Scarf Basculegion, which seems to be more common in ranked battles and in open team sheet tournaments, as well as this Garchomp build. So he's done very well for him so far. It's gotten to 9-1, but sort of interesting to watch this play out at this point in a tournament. Well, here is a new look for turn 1. Lorcy is going to be leading the Sneasler and the Delphox. So Sinistcha not out front this time around. And that's just fine because Chris did not bring the Basculegion up front. Did not want to have to play those guessing games on flip turning or getting stuck. Well, speaking of guessing games, both these trainers have the benefit of open natures here, so they might know which one's faster, except they're both adamant. They are both adamant. Fun. They'll have to guess if each other has opted to go for some stat point training into their speed or not. All right, well, both players now are going to Mega Evolve their 2 fire types on the field. Delphox and Charizard both getting a significant boost to their stats by utilizing that Mega Evolution. Sneasler on Lorcy's side goes first, fakes out the Charizard, gets really important chip damage there, but no fake out coming out from Chris, which means that this Sneasler is just open to a Side Shock.
Yeah, that's a devastating turn there. Lorcy gets everything, gets that knockout. We never really find out which one's faster because of the priority there. Charizard flinching, and we see that things work out a little bit better in that 1v1 when Incineroar doesn't troll its friend by intimidating the Sneasler to allow it to move before Delphox.
Well, the other part of that is that Sneasler going down has powered up this Basculegion that now switches in. This makes Last Respects a reasonable choice just to click and start spamming. Going to deal big damage to the Delphox, which has to retreat, deal big damage to the Sneasler, deal big damage to basically everything except for this Incineroar on Lorcy's team. As Incineroar comes in, we'll drop the attack of that Basculegion as it fires off a Last Respects into the Incineroar on the switch in here. Very negligible damage because of the resistance and the Intimidate. Sneasler gets to fire off a Dire Claw into Charizard. No status effects there. Heat Wave from Charizard will miss the Incineroar, but hit the Sneasler. Probably the Pokemon you most wanted to hit, but Sneasler still able to survive at 16 hit points.
Yeah, that's a really important survival too, where still reasonably threatening on the field, right? You had another Dire Claw, might be able to pick this Charizard up, so now you're very motivated, I guess, to try to pick up the knockout and do that with the Basculegion, but then you're leaving the intimidated Basculegion on the field, where Incineroar are going to have kind of free reign here, and either of these Pokemon are very threatening to it because the Choice Scarf Basculegion isn't able to switch to a water type attack.
Yeah.
Also important at Cristopher's side out too, where again, it's Choice Scarf Basculegion. Even if you do opt to take it out of battle here, very close to getting knocked down to his final 2 Pokemon and getting locked into a move for the remainder of the game. Healthy Incineroar makes it a lot scarier. Incineroar looked pretty bad in that first game, but this is why you bring it, where it really makes it hard for this Basculegion to commit to a move. Yeah,
well, the big benefit for Chris is that the Incineroar does not have a Dark type attack. It's Fake Out, Parting Shot, Helping Hand, and Flare Blitz. So Basculegion is not feeling all that threatened here. And Chris, this is why Chris is 9-1, correctly identifying that Lorcy needs to protect that Sneasler, and instead going for the double up onto Incineroar. And those 2 resisted hits are adding up. Here comes the Parting Shot into the Basculegion, dropping it down to -2 attack and allowing the Incineroar to come back in to bring it down to -3. Really putting on the pressure for Chris to switch that Pokemon out.
Yeah, I think probably just healthy enough on the Incineroar too, where if you wind up a situation later in the game, especially with Intimidate, you should be able to fairly safely survive a Last Respects and sort of try to, again, make it difficult to decide what move to lock into. Basculegion did come in here, I assume healthy enough now to survive Last Respects for the opposing Basculegion, thanks to those 2 attack drops. So Basculegion just got to try to pick up something on Lorcy's side of the field in order to get this down to a 2 Pokemon remaining situation for Cristopher and stop that opposing Basculegion from being able to do any switching in and out.
Yeah, the Basculegion for Lorcy at least can survive 1 attack no matter what because of that Focus Sash, but you can see the plan here from Lorcy, recognizing that Chris's Basculegion, once Incineroar goes down, nothing else can stand up against it. So investing a lot into making that Pokemon, getting that Pokemon off the field, or trying to keep it on the field and at reduced attack.
The final Pokemon is King Gambit, so that previous game we saw Basculegion close things out, and King Gambit's going to make that much more difficult this time, getting in for free.
Yeah, the King Gambit is a huge shakeup for Chris, and gets it right once again. Another turn that Chris has gotten correct, now firing off the Last Respects into Sneasler. That's going to get that KO, and Incineroar comes back in. Will get another Intimidate down onto the Basculegion on Chris's side, but then activates the Defiant boost for King Gambit. And this Incineroar does not have a Dark type attack, but it does have Flare Blitz in the Sun.
Yeah, may want to use it given this situation, but with 3 Intimidates now, this Basculegion that again is locked into Last Respect. Incineroar not threatened by it at all, so maybe staring down that opposing King Gambit. But increasingly things are getting a little bit spooky here, where Lorcy's losing a lot of resources by getting these reads wrong. Going to be very important now, I think, to start picking up some knockouts quickly, because he's probably going to need a Pokemon advantage to finish off this Choice Scarf Basculegion later in the game.
It's going to be really difficult for Lorcy to make it through here with both the Basculegion and the King Gambit healthy on the field for Chris. With that Delphox in the back, really wants to get those Pokemon off the field and down. King Gambit will protect, recognizes that it is under threat from a Flare Blitz. Instead, the fake out from Incineroar then will connect into the King Gambit. So no damage coming out from Chris's side. Last respects from Lorcy's Basculegion will be able to pick up the KO onto the Charizard on Chris's side. But now the Basculegion was able to reset its attack stat. It is coming back out on the field at max attack stat and the ability to, again, keep running over this team, but Basculegion still has its focus sash.
Yeah, so it's not going to be able to one-shot the opposing Basculegion, and King Gambit could try to help out with a Sucker Punch or even with Kowtow Cleave, but then you have to worry about being caught, doubling into a Protect. Incineroar also threatening a ton of damage to the opposing King Gambit, although this timing is really great by Cristopher. Well, not only to catch Incineroar on the field, which is just kind of better because you really don't want your Basculegion to get intimidated, even if King Gambit's going to get a boost for it. But also the sun has just expired, so potentially able to survive that Flare Blitz now as well.
Also potentially able to go for a water type attack if you wanted to. Instead, Chris will just go for the Sucker Punch onto Basculegion on Lorcy's side. That will bring Basculegion down to its focus sash. That brings down to 1 hit point, and the Wave Crash coming out from Chris's Basculegion, dealing that 1 hit point damage, the final piece of damage necessary to knock out Basculegion on Lorcy's side. That is a huge deal. This Basculegion and this King Gambit are looking very, very safe for the rest of this game. A Flare Blitz without the sun, not even enough to pick up the KO onto King Gambit, and it's just Delphox and it's just Incineroar against this Choice Scarf Basculegion locked into Wave Crash and a King Gambit at +1.
Yeah, I mean, exactly the right play by Cristopher. Able to position a way he's able to lock into Wave Crash instead of Last Respects against all these Fire-type Pokemon. And hey, it doesn't matter if you're firing a not very effective attack off and there's only 1 HP on the opposing Pokemon. So great job from him. He didn't shed the Intimidate too early, which I think would have been a temptation in this game. Moves out at just the right time, and now is a position where he's likely locked up this game too.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of pressure for like the last 3 or 4 turns to retreat the Basculegion to reset the attack stat, but very smart, very heads-up play for Chris to realize it's not safe, it's not safe. I need to get this King Gambit in safely, and then I can start resetting with the sacrifice the Charizard.
Yeah, and a great mix-up to have the King Gambit at all, right? Where he brought that out late enough that maybe that's not the Pokemon Lorcy was expecting, and he doesn't just go for the 4 here. I think I agree. I just don't know how you win from there.
Yeah, there isn't a way.
Yeah, so really fun game there. Chris made some really excellent reads in the middle of that game. Just kind of really sounded like he was soul reading him there a little bit.
Yeah.
A couple of very important reads he got correct, where I think there were like 2 or 3 turns in a row where Lorcy kind of just got no value, and that allowed Cristopher to reverse an early game advantage. And then what a well-planned end game as well. Again, just such great timing on when King Gambit entered the battle, when he opted to sacrifice the Charizard this time in order to bring out that healthy Basculegion once again. And the Choice Scarf Basculegion, despite kind of just being the fast damaging Pokemon, in a lot of ways a little bit more difficult to play than the Focus Sash version, because you have to use a more pre-planning because you're less flexible. And Cristopher able to get around that lack of flexibility by sequencing this game really well.
Yeah, this is the difference between me using Choice Scarf Basculegion on ladder and Chris Hahn using Choice Scarf Basculegion. It really is a difference of a lot of times players of my level or better will end up just saying, okay, I have this Basculegion as my ace later on, so I'm just gonna deal a bunch of damage and then the Basculegion will come out eventually and clean up. But it's actually very difficult to get into a position where Basculegion is, because it only has single target attacks, for it to swing multiple times to pick up those KOs. And Chris did a really good job of setting up and maneuvering around to set up that situation for the end game, where it really was just, all right, Basculegion has no checks at this point, and that's game, and you saw Lorcy forfeit because of it.
Yeah, if you're playing Basculegion at home, I think there's a lot of things to take notes on for the way that Cristopher's played in these sets. I think just in general, his willingness to use it early in the game and kind of find spots where he doesn't get punished for that. Didn't do a whole lot the first game. You need to lead it and get that flip turn out. So not afraid to expose it to some risk, and really paying dividends so far, where it's just a really fun set between 2 great players.
Yeah, this has been a great set between both of these players. This is exactly what I wanted to see out of our first Champions Regional here. 2 really cool teams here, Lorcy and Chris both running sort of the fire-type megas. It's really interesting because it is very much Lorcy feels like an early Delphox balance style team, and then you have Chris Hahn with the ladder special here with Charizard and especially that Garchomp.
Yeah, both trainers sitting out their leads here. Remember, this is a very pivotal moment where the trainer who wins this game will at least have enough wins to potentially move on to that next phase. But because there's a couple or maybe even 3 trainers aren't going to make it based on resistance, they really need this this win right now. It's a huge match against an opponent who's very skilled as well, so maybe they'll win a game for you in the next round if you're able to defeat them here.
Yeah, absolutely. These are two great opponents to have on your schedule if you are worried about your strength of schedule. So a win here will set up whoever wins here for a very strong chance at making it into our top cut later on in the day. Delphox and Sneasler the lead for Lorcy, and it's Garchomp and Basculegion for Chris. So Chris has now brought the Basculegion out once again, but no Sinistcha here to redirect or really threaten that Pokemon. So Basculegion might just feel safe to go straight on the offensive. You can see Lorcy recognizes that, knows that Delphox cannot be out on the field without Sinistcha next to it if the Basculegion is also there.
And either side seeing exactly what they want you there, or both sides switching in the first turn. Exciting to see what this Delphox go for. Last time we just saw a quick flip turn to the other slot by the Basculegion when these two Pokemon faced off in turn one. What happens this time? Just to protect, okay. Doesn't want to risk Cristopher changing his mind.
Yeah, very safe there to go for the protect.
And he would have gotten hit. Okay, great read.
Yeah, huge read there from Lorcy to protect that Delphox, keep it around for at least one more turn here. But really great heads-up play from Chris as well to recognize that, okay, I have shown Basculegion, I know Lorcy needs Sinistcha on the field. Let me go ahead and bring in my Charizard to really punish that Sinistcha switch.
Yeah, now it's a tough spot where it's a similar spot that we saw with Sinistcha running into in that first game where Charizard threatening a big heat wave in that slot. And if you try to switch out into the Incineroar, this time it will not be a close combat, but instead perhaps a wave crash going into that slot.
Still a one-hit
or into the
KO.
Delphox, yeah, easily going to pick up a knockout. So a little bit different way to make the same sort of pin by Cristopher, and both sides are going to have to make a really important decision here. Can you afford to sacrifice a Pokemon?
Well, Sinistcha will Rage Powder here to protect the Delphox. Lorcy really wanting to make sure that Delphox is able to deal some damage this turn. Wave Crash from Basculegion into Sinistcha deals a lot of damage for a resisted attack here. No Mega Evolution coming out from the Charizard to make sure that the Basculegion's Wave Crash is able to deal as much damage as possible. But that means that this Psyshock is able to deal good damage back. 88 damage there. I had done 84 and 85 previously, so Delphox should be able to pick up the KO here, but without the Drought, Wave Crash may have dealt more damage, but the Heat Wave did not.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a little different Charizard than we're used to seeing. And yeah, Sinistcha surviving because of the decision not to Mega Evolve there. Anticipating a switch perhaps, or maybe trying to get a cheeky knockout on the Delphox. We don't know what Pokemon that Wave Crash was initially targeted at.
Right.
But instead, maybe get some room for Lorcy here. I think one of the reasons he opted for the Rage Powder instead of doing something else is because Delphox had burned the Protect in the previous turn. Now with the option of protecting for Delphox, Lorcy can play things a little bit more open if he wants to.
Well, there is King Gambit coming out on the field for the Charizard, trying to catch a Psyshock, but
catches an Intimidate.
Catches an Intimidate and a Defiant boost. So now at +1, while Lorcy goes for a Protect onto Delphox. Because he knew that he was switching out the Sinistcha, did not want to open himself up to a Wave Crash. And Chris showing there, most likely has just been targeting that Delphox down with Wave Crash.
Yeah, and I think a great read by bringing the King Gambit in. I think thinking the same thing I was, right? Oh, I understand why that Lorcy made the play he did.
Yeah.
Now when he can protect, he probably will. So Incineroar's coming in just like he did last time. I got to punish that. Not like a super great position. Once again, probably, I think the Drought might be better to have active than the lack of drought, question mark, the regular weather.
The normal humidity.
Yeah, it's Indianapolis weather. But still a fun spot for the Basculegion here. It has been intimidated, but it is locked into a water type move that I don't think either of these Pokemon really want to take anyway. So Delphix scared out of the battle anyway. Sinistcha going to come back in. Doesn't heal up Incineroar because he's still at full health, but will take this Wave Crash and be knocked out by it despite the resist.
Yeah, instead of healing up the Incineroar, it instead takes the damage that would have dealt 100% of damage to the Incineroar instead, and deals a little bit back to the Basculegion in recoil. But now Incineroar is able to fire off a Flare Blitz into the King Gambit without the Drought, not enough to pick up the KO. So now the lack of Drought is coming up big for Chris to protect the King Gambit. Iron Head just trying to get a little bit more damage down onto the Incineroar. Feels a decent amount, but Sinistcha going down is so bad for Lorcy. Without Sinistcha, there's not really an answer for the enemy Basculegion.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of which, one of the Pokemon we saw him counter that Basculegion with was his own Basculegion, who notably is a gray box for this fourth battle.
A gray box and Sinistcha.
Let's just move forward.
So the gray box and the Sinistcha is already knocked out, so no trick room available regardless. And I really don't. It's going to take a miracle of positioning for Lorcy to be able to find a way to get damage down onto this this Basque Legion because it's a ghost type, it can't be faked out, and this Incineroar, again, does not have a dark type attack. Basque Legion is free to just wave crash for the rest of the game.
Yeah, who cares about Last Respects now? We're like, you've got 2 Pokemon weak against it, and noted defensive Dynamo Sneasler, who is going to probably look like it's weak to it even if it gets a hold of it. And Incineroar can help out a little bit with Intimidates here, but it's not going to be so easy. And even King Gambit potentially very impactful there. The Iron Head is a little bit sad that Incineroar, but pending how this King Gambit's trained, if this is a frail Sneasler, we learned before, actually we learned last time Lorcy was on treatment, is a frail Sneasler.
It's pretty frail,
so,
yeah.
I think even at +0, I think you do about 50 damage minimum with a Sucker Punch. So pretty impactful attacks, even that direction if you get the chance. But first we'll see that knockout in the Incineroar. Certainly can't switch out for a Delphox, so kind of just have to take it.
Yeah, well, Lorcy does not run in fear of the Wave Crash. Instead, goes for a close combat on the Sneasler to the King Gambit. Even with the Chople Berry, that means that King Gambit will go down. So Basque Legion instead went for the KO onto Incineroar to prevent any kind of Intimidate cycling or Parting Shot and Intimidate cycling to reduce the power of Basque Legion. Does give Sneasler the opportunity to activate the White Herb, however, which means that it will be now faster than the Basque Legion, and you at least have Dire Claw outs now.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to require one. Still has that Wave Crash available. Delphox is coming. I assume on the other side we will see the Garchomp, who pretty excited about its opponents, where neither of them going to have a very easy time dealing with it, especially with that much larger threat next to them. We're like, can you really afford to attack Garchomp? But also you have
to. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And like, okay, well, it's fun too where, well, Charizard probably less impactful for the course of this battle. Still potentially useful where if you want to go for an Earthquake to knock out the Sneasler, you can still try to switch that in since Basque Legion is sort of active position. But first, Garchomp going to take a big hit.
Yeah, Garchomp takes a big hit from that close combat, but not big enough. With that Citrus Berry going to heal itself back up well above 50% as Basque Legion once again just gets to fire off these Wave Crashes. One Wave Crash into Delphox, that's going to pick up the KO. And now Garchomp gets a turn here, going to be able to deal damage back to that Sneasler that has now taken a defense drop. The Dragon Claw picks up the KO, and Chris on 2-1. Dropped game 1, but bounced back incredibly in games 2 and 3. And he looked incredible piloting this team.
Yeah, I mean, really fun set there by 2 great players. But Chris